The creator economy is booming, but how do we separate real influence from vanity metrics? And how do smaller influencers, micro influencers, use their digital insights to leverage their audience to grow their brand with the same precision as the biggest players in digital media? Those questions answered today. Expert Connections starts now. The creator economy is booming, but are you really measuring what matters and leveraging your audience into serious growth? Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton Smith. I am excited as a creator and a marketer. I'm excited for the conversation today with our expert. Our guest is PhD researcher and founder, Dr. Kristen Wager. She is passionate about understanding what people online actually want, especially when it comes to influencers and the creator economy, which is why she founded Creator Pulse. It's a platform designed to help influencers measure and maximize their impact using real-time, real audience feedback. Kristen, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and chatting about the creator economy today.
Yeah, so okay, you developed a grading system of sorts to help creators understand their impact or maybe where the impact is lacking. And I know sometimes for those who are creating content, they might not be hitting the mark in all the areas they want to be. So many insights to be gained from finding out from our audiences what they actually want, what actually resonates. So let's start at the very beginning. Tell us more about Creator Pulse and why you created it in the first place.
So I initially started, I was working for this large ad tech company, and I was a consumer researcher running a research department for really big creators in the food space mostly. And I was always asked to scale, scale, scale. And I'm like, yes, that's great, but how do we scale? How do we make it? How do we make research accessible to people who don't necessarily afford it, need it on a much faster and agile rate than just like a 3-month project that I was working on? There wasn't really any tools at this company for me to leverage and have the ability to scale research like I wanted to. And so just on the side, I started thinking about ways that I could scale, and I'm like, there is no tool for creators, for influencers to understand their audience in a way that big brands do, right? Like Google, Amazon, Meta, they spend millions on research every year. And I think like for me, I was just kind of wanting to bring creators into that space and start getting them to think like big brands. So that's kind of where Creator Pulse came from. And how I started the tool and how I started thinking about the tool and trying to get creators to get access and knowledge too. I think there's a huge piece of like educating creators on what research is and how to implement it into their brands.
Absolutely. I mean, for so many creators, we're creating content, but it often feels like we're like throwing it into this black hole and waiting to see based on views or length of video watch. It's like it's not a whole lot of info that we're looking at. And of course, the algorithms too, time of day you post and when things go live, and is there something else happening in the world that's pulling attention away from your content? So many different factors that go into even how or why you might get a view or not get a view in the first place. So it's like we create all this content and throw it into the black hole of YouTube and like wait and wonder. And as you said, here at Expert Connections, we do not spend any money on research, let alone the millions that big brands have to spend to find out what's working or not. So with Creator Pulse, how would it help, say, a small business like Expert Connections, or maybe content creators who either have a passion project, a podcast that they're doing, but actually has good substance that they could leverage and actually make some revenue off of it? How does Creator Pulse work in order to help give them insights?
So essentially, what Creator Pulse is a DIY research platform. I'm starting with a proprietary metric that looks at a creator's influence. And essentially, the way that I look at data and I look at research is that, you mentioned like shares and time of day, like all of those metrics and engagement metrics are sort of what's happening, right? Like, did people view you? Did people like your post? Did people comment on it? But research really digs a little bit deeper into the why and helps you strategize your brand or strategize your content, strategize your products. So it helps you really ask your audience, what they're willing to purchase from you, if they are willing to purchase from you, what type of content they prefer. It asks you what time of day they prefer their content. So there's so many things that you can do to just ask your audience to then design your strategy and your business decisions and root them in data so that you're not just going with your gut and throwing content out there, as you mentioned. So I started with, we wanted to start simple because we're going to grow as we go. So I started with this unique proprietary metric that's called the Creator Impact Score. And essentially what the Creator Impact Score measures is it measures purchase interest, it measures purchase consideration, what past actions, the quality of recommendations that's perceived from your audience, and then how much your audience trusts you. And essentially all five of these measures are pulled from my academic experience from e-commerce theory and have driven me to build this score that essentially summarizes and captures a total influence, and how willing your audience is to purchase items from you. And what I want this score to be is I want it to be the NPS score, right? Net Promoter Score for creators. I want them to be able to leverage this score to say, hey, I have this amount of influence. And it's a score from 0 to 100, if I didn't mention that. So if you have a score of 75, you've got great influence. You are impactful on your audience. They're interested in you. They trust your brand. They trust your recommendations. And then you can take this to a brand when you're pitching and in your media kits, and you can say, hey, I have this much influence over my audience. I want to leverage this score to to one, stand out amongst their peers, and two, to leverage it to get better brand deals and increase their dollar amount when it comes to making deals with these bigger brands.
Yeah, and we've seen examples of this, with the makers of Prime, for instance, that started with their YouTube channel, created all sorts of content. They had such a loyal following that then they essentially created a product to match, to fit their audience. And now, of course, Prime has surpassed Gatorade. It has surpassed, all of these other competitors on the market. And really, when you look at it, it's driven by the content creators. And so, think of what that can do for smaller brands who either are looking for products to endorse, for things that that their audience would buy from them, or creating their own product. There's a startup in Lansing that we featured here on this show called Soberish, and she actually started out. Kim Gamez, by creating her TikTok channel, and it was promoting other products. And she was doing that and realized, hey, wait a minute, my audience is actually, an audience that is looking for new products, is looking to be sold to, and they trust me. And so eventually, long process, of course, nothing simple in the startup world, but she has created her own products, and it's highly successful. And again, it started with her creating content online. And so I'm curious, Kristen, Dr. Wager, I want to make sure to keep mentioning that, because this also is not just, a fleeting idea from another content creator. This is, and I've gone through your process, and we've had a number of conversations, and each time it's so fascinating to me how much information, how much research you're able to provide that those of us who are not researchers wouldn't even know where to begin. So, with your background in research, now you're at the forefront of this creator economy with a brand new app that is coming out. What has inspired you to make this transition? You were working with really big brands, highly successful, and now you're really focusing on these smaller brands. Why the transition?
Well, first off, I love that you mentioned Kim because that is actually a beautiful example of how someone who has this influence is leveraging and listening to their audience and saying, "Hey, I see a niche need, and I'm going to then now build it. One, build a product around what my audience wants, and two, leverage my influence to sell that product." And I think, obviously influencer marketing in general is so powerful, and we're kind of like transitioning into yet leveraging that a lot more. But I want creators to be able to leverage it themselves for their own brands and for their own products and their own content. So I just wanted to say that really
Yeah.
quick because that's a perfect example, and I love that it's a local example as well. Um, I think to answer your question, why I was inspired to transition from being in and working at market research companies that worked with Google and worked with Amazon and Meta and these big brands, like very exciting if you're in research and getting to work with some of these brands. Um, I think for me, my passion is not to, answer my phone at 10 o'clock at night to make sure that a client is satisfied. When I started at my previous company, I started working with these creators, and they're so insanely creative. They are normal people like you and me. They have taken their hobby and their passion and turned it into a business. And I think for the most part, and this is maybe just a symptom of where I was at and working in the food space, a lot of the people that I was working with were women, were moms, were people who wanted vacations and wanted to decompress, but then also worked really hard on the other end. And they weren't looking to, clock hours. They were really just looking for results. And I think that's kind of where I fell in love with the creator space, and I felt very like connected to the space because I related to the people, to, taking my hobby and my passion of research and turning it into a whole business. And I think that too, as I was, working with these creators, I just noticed a huge, huge gap of knowledge around research and how to leverage data to really drive brand growth. And coming from huge companies and working in market research for huge companies, I know that research is insanely powerful. These companies wouldn't be spending millions of dollars on research if it wasn't that powerful. And so I think what my motivation for that is like, okay, let's take this, harness research, get some research in the hands of these smaller businesses and help them grow like the biggest players, like the Amazons and Metas of the world. And like I want to go back to, there is just a huge gap. And so I think I'm at a point right now where it is such a niche topic, and then in the creator space, it's just not, people are not aware of it. So I'm at the point where I'm educating and teaching people and getting them to a point to see the value of research. So it's exciting all around, and I think I just really fell in love with the creator space because it's a creative space. And it's people who are taking their hobbies and just going with it, and creating something for themselves, which is so powerful.
And how amazing has it been to see, for instance, like music artists, singers who on TikTok a few songs later just are able to go viral, and this talent that otherwise would have been probably undiscovered forever, other than in people's hometowns, suddenly erupting into record deals thanks to TikTok or Instagram or other platforms that creators are using. It's just been so fun to see. So data-driven decisions. I want to talk more about this, what you were just talking about. So data really is the backbone of, big marketing agencies and teams that really know how to grow big brands or brands to become big. But many smaller creators rely on instincts, and that gets them so far. You know, they have the skill, they have the ability to create. How can those creators now use the research you're talking about, the insights and analytics, in order to compete with the bigger brands that have more money for data?
I don't necessarily think it's competing with brands. I think it's leaning into what their audiences want so that they can then leverage their influence across their audience to get brand deals, to sell products, to and maybe potentially even create products like Soberish has done. But
I
um,
love that, by the way. I love that because also it's that reminder that we don't all have to be in competition with one another.
yeah, and I think and that's what's so cool about creators is they're unique and the people that follow them are unique and follow them for a specific reason. And so it's not about it's learning how you stand out and why you stand out, and then leaning into those reasons for why you stand out. So I think a really good example is I was working with a creator and I was doing a custom research project, so larger project, about 3 months, and asking their audience, what they want, what they like, what they dislike, what type of content would motivate them to come to their page more. And essentially, what we found was this kind of niche topic that this creator totally missed. It was called Meals for Two. And their audience was so perfectly designed for Meals for Two. They didn't like waste. They were either households that were just married and didn't have kids, or households that were, married partner or their kids, had flown the coop. So 18 plus, right? And they just were kind of primed to have these recipes created around Meals for Two to like decrease that waste and not have to have weeks of leftovers because you can't a meal for five, right? And so being able to kind of like understand your audience and then go, okay, well, what do they want more of? What does my audience look like? And then does that match what they want? And take that and turn it into income. So, like for that example, she created a series called Meals for Two. It was wildly successful among her audience. She ended up creating in a 6 month period 12 posts and made about 46K on it. So across those posts and just ad revenue.
Wow.
So it's kind of stuff like that, like where it- she had been relying on her gut for a really long time that was really successful, and she's going to continue to rely on her gut. There's no question about it, and those gut moments are still going to give her success. But through research we were able to uncover this unmet need for her particular audience that was also wildly successful.
Have you ever seen someone, I imagine in the world of creators, the answer is going to be yes. Being a creator myself, I say that with full disclosure. Have you ever seen someone who has not followed the recommendations despite the research, despite the data, and they're like, no, this is what I want to do. I know it's going to work. What is that like? How does that turn out?
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I just wrote a LinkedIn post about this. Um, Absolutely. And I think you across the board are gonna, as a researcher, you're going to get that no matter what. That's just a part of the job is like you give them data, you give them recommendations, and it's kind of a you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink type of thing. I know how powerful it is. I can give them the data to show what you essentially should be doing based on data, but you can't make them act. It's their brand, it's their identity. There was one creator that I was working with that really wanted to transition into lifestyle travel and home, and her audience was screaming at her to not do that. They wanted food, they loved her food content. And my recommendation for that was, okay, well, your passion project is like, I don't want to stifle your passion project. Like, you were able to build this food brand around your passion, you should still be able to go and build other things around your new passions as you grow as a person. Um, the recommendation for that, in response to getting all the negative feedback for the lifestyle content, was to say, okay, well, why don't we create a new website that then establishes a new niche that you can find followers to appreciate that lifestyle content, uh, while still continuing to listen to your loyal followers and provide that food content for them, and they don't have to sift through all the lifestyle content. So that was a creator that didn't listen. And she continued to do it. Is she still successful? Absolutely. Like, she's still raking in the dollars. Um, but I was just on Reddit the other day, and I follow this foodie snark, I think it's called, on Reddit. And I was just kind of like asking questions about, what is it that like makes you want to follow specifically a food creator. And this brand was specifically called out for the lifestyle content, and it just cracked me up because I was like, okay, like, this is still an issue, and her loyal audience is still complaining about this piece. So yes, what do? You laugh when you look at Reddit and you see that it's still the same answer. Um, like, I think there's something to be said that, like, creators are human. They built their brand, on their passions, on their hobbies, and like there's still they still need a space to continue to grow as humans. And I think we, as like content consumers, we often are like, I go to this specific creator because I like this thing that they did. And there's not really, as a consumer, a lot of room to like let that creator grow a lot of times. Um, just as a researcher, giving space to let them be who they are and make the business decisions that they're going to make.
Sounds a lot like in the marketing world when someone wants to deviate from their brand and we're like, "Oh, let's just kinda steer you back a little bit here." So, Kristen, I wanna come back to the DIY aspect of your app, because I think that's another thing that's really important to highlight here is Creator Pulse is not, going to overwhelm, creators with data. And, because I can hear, in my own head some of these rumblings about, but wait a minute, this sounds like another job. I already have enough jobs, enough hats to wear, enough roles to fill. So a lot of creators feel overwhelmed by data or don't know what to do with it. What's the easiest way to start using Creator Pulse and start taking in some of this data and these insights?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go to creatorpulse.io and sign up for an account. And essentially, you start with the creator impact score to get an idea of what your influence is. You get that score from 0 to 100. It is insanely simple to use my website. Insanely user and creator friendly. So you essentially go to the website, you select the survey that you want to learn more about. Like I said, we're starting with the creator impact score. Eventually, it will grow into a content strategy survey, a product survey, and you'll be able to ask your audience these more nuanced questions to grow your brand. But again, I wanted to start small and get something out there so that creators could start asking questions to their audience, and getting that feedback. You click share, you copy a link, you put it in your socials or your newsletter if you have news subscribers. um, and then the data gets filtered in back into a very, very simplified dashboard that really, as a researcher, I could go into, cutting data and, by gender, by age, and by population, and get into like crosstabs. But I really wanted to simplify it because data doesn't have to be complicated to make it actionable. And so I wanted to, with this particular audience, be very concise and make it very, very simple. So we look at top two boxes, and then based on top two boxes, we make recommendations from there. And it's all in a really simple, easy to use dashboard, as the data comes in. So, and even we offer recommendations based on the data that you do get. So not only are you getting, your top two box for purchase interest and past actions and trust, you're also getting, hey, we're seeing that trust is a little bit low. Here are some things that you can do as a creator to increase your trust, and some of those recommendations would be like having, local people come in that have authority to create more trust. So like there's things that you can do if your numbers are a little bit low to make sure you get higher. um to even answer your question even further, like you don't have to use, of course I want people to use my platform, you don't have to even use your platform. So I did some simple research myself. As I mentioned, I went to Reddit and I asked one simple question. I said, hey, what makes a food creator worth following? And I got a so much data just from that. I got key themes of authenticity, genuine, um, expertise and knowledge in their area. So I pulled all of this data and got these amazing enriched themes that I can now use to say, hey, like these are things that are motivating people to follow creators. Creators, you can go and just put a simple question out there on your socials saying, hey, I want to create new content for you guys. What do you want to see next from me? So it's not just, you don't have to be an expert in research. You don't have to use my tool. You don't have to have these giant big projects around research. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can literally just be, hey, what do you like? I'm going to create some stuff around it, and then listen. I think that's also the bigger thing is like if you ask, listen to what they're saying. Um, so yeah, I think it's just even as simple as that.
I love this. This is like the exclamation point on this entire interview that, I
Yeah.
mean, creators, it doesn't have to cost anything but your time and a quick, simple question on Reddit to start collecting some information. But even then, Kristen, what I really loved that you said was data doesn't have to be complicated to be actionable. And that I think sums up this entire interview that with your DIY approach, creators and low cost method, creators can start collecting those insights and take action on them with Creator Pulse. So this has been amazing. Dr. Kristen Wager, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you for sharing your platform with us. We will include all of the links below so that people can connect to your website, connect to your app, and start getting the data to grow their content.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate it.
Some people roll right from dry January into sober February. What about an entire year that's sober ish? Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm your host, Julie Holton. Enough with the plan words. Today's startup is, in fact, called Soberish. Let's get right to our expert, a serial entrepreneur and tech startup founder who said she wouldn't do it again. And yet here we are. Kim Gamez, welcome to the show.
Hey, Julie, thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you here, Kim. I love your passion for the grind, which is why here we are doing this whole startup thing all over again. I'm excited to dive into some questions about Soberish. But first, I really want to set the scene with more of your background for our audience. So, with your last venture, you were featured on the Today Show and in Forbes for creating a marketplace that amassed 1 million users in just 24 months. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so my entrepreneurship journey really started like right out of high school. I took the money that I made from my like high school graduation party, and my parents are real estate investors. And my dad was like, "Oh my gosh, this could be like a great first investment for you. You could put this as a down payment." So I say all this because I don't know another way. I only know of kind of really thinking outside of the box. From there, I met my husband. We got married, had a business or started a business and had a baby all when I was 20. And so we had that business for like 17 years. And again, I knew nothing about business, but I learned how to talk to my customer. I know now that's all called like customer discovery, but learned about their pain points, learned about opportunities, learned how to hustle and do all of the marketing just because I didn't know any better. So I took all of that, and we had a couple of restaurants and continued to invest in real estate. But it was in 2016, I was helping my niece plan her quinceanera. And because my husband's from Mexico, and it's when a girl turns 15, and I was shocked that there was like no resources online. And so I went and I was like, I wonder if I could like maybe launch a website or an app or something to help these families plan. Did a little bit of market research, realized that there was, over like 500,000 of these events happening every year. The average quinceanera was like $20,000. And I was like, holy crap, this is a huge market. And I thought maybe because I had watched enough Shark Tank that I could pitch the event to investors and that maybe I could like, put a team together to create this app. And so we did. We launched in 2017 and yeah, grew from an idea to over 1 million users in the first couple of years, 3 million users by the time we ended up getting acquired last year by David's Bridal. So that's a little bit about my backstory.
Well, and I love that because you say, you didn't know anything about business when you started, but really what you didn't know were all the things not to do or all the things that we get hung up on once we start to learn a little bit about business. You just looked at, the situation as it was and created what you needed to, the systems you needed to. And clearly it's going well for you. I met you recently at a pitch competition. You were pitching, I was judging, and I remember you joking because it resonates so much with me. You had joked that after that last startup, you maybe weren't going to do it again. And then, of course, here we are. So tell us about Soberish. Where did this idea come from? This idea that you just couldn't quite say no to?
So, growing that last startup, I would go home, not necessarily every day, but a couple times a week and definitely on the weekends. And I would have a glass of wine or a cocktail to take the edge off. And, after the acquisition of that company, I couldn't just go home and like drink all day. Like, well, you can't do that. And I'm not, a perky pigeon anymore. Like I can't throw back tequila like I could before. Also, my mom, who struggles with alcohol, recently moved in with us. And so I started exploring like non-alcoholic alternatives, but I still wanted that like buzz, but without the booze, and found some different products that really did what they said. They gave me a buzz without the booze. So I started reviewing them, and I love all things social media. And so I started recording. My mom and I would record ourselves trying these drinks, and a couple of videos went viral. Brands started reaching out for us to try the drinks and give our review. And I threw up a landing page just to see like how many people were actually going to my video, because I'm a nerd, going to my video, clicking on it and purchasing. And in one short month, I was able to generate over $60,000 in sales for these brands. And it was like, hold up, this is real money. This isn't just like a couple $100. Like this is real money. And so again, looking just like with the last step, I saw a big sober curious movement, that a lot of people were playing with their sobriety. And it wasn't necessarily that they had a bad relationship with alcohol, but it's just some people don't want to drink for lots of reasons. So I was looking for a solution where I could find, buy, and review these products, and there really wasn't one out there. And so that's where I was like, something like this needs to happen. And then I was toying around with a name, and I'm like, it's like sober, but not really. That's just too boring. It's like sober-ish. And then, me, I was like, go daddy, sober-ish available. So that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, marketing pro tip, always make sure the domain is available, right?
Right.
Okay, so tell us then, so that evolved. What exactly is Soberish? How do you describe it to your market?
Yeah, so Soberish is an e-commerce platform where we pair both great content in communities with products and brands that deliver a buzz. So think like Amazon for all things for a sober, curious community. So you can go and find non-alcoholic wines or hemp-derived beverages, ready to drink in cans, to mushroom elixirs and all kinds of things. And then we also, though, because there was so much stigma in the market, not necessarily for the sober market, but on the cannabis side of the market for hemp-derived products, which are federally legal, there's still a lot of stigma. And so there was a lot of people who wanted to maybe get into this space, but were really apprehensive. Like they didn't know either one how, or they were maybe like embarrassed to ask. And so I really just tried to, I don't want to say dumbify things, but keep it in really simple, approachable language at Soberish, that it's just like you and I are talking like, hey girl, let me explain this to you. It's this, this, and this. Like trying to keep it super easy and feel like I can be, your BFF to go to online.
Okay, so you got your start for this company on TikTok. Tell us about that. Like, how did that evolve? How do you feel that real conversation with real people through social media has helped to launch this?
At first, because I mean, I have kids. I'm a mother of 5. I have teenagers, and I wasn't gonna, and I know on social media you can get flagged or banned for saying like all of the bad cannabis words like weed or pot or anything. And so I was just really like talking authentically. Like I would say like, oh, I've never played with the giggle grass. Not I in my head that sounded normal. Yeah, everyone else was like, what did she just say? And I'm like, what, you don't call it the giggle grass? Like I get the giggles, it's the giggle grass. And so just really trying to keep things real. Um, I didn't edit out like bloopers or like me not knowing what I was talking about. I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's go find an expert. And then I'd go find an expert to talk on said topic. I just, again, really thinking about keeping it real on social media. Also, with that first video went viral, I talked to a couple other brands that I was friendly with. And I said, so how did you grow off of your viral video? And they gave me some tips like respond with a video and make sure you post like 3 times a day, about the same kind of topic. And so all of that really helped grow. But then I got flagged for my 3rd time and TikTok banned that account. So I'm back working it. I'm back at now 1,000 followers. I was up to 50,000 before, but it's just a creative place to play.
And note to self about we'll do a separate marketing connections video on that aspect of it. What happens when you have everything tied into one channel and then you get banned like you did. Back to Soberish. So building a community is obviously at the core of what you're doing here. So how do you engage with your audience? Is it all through TikTok and social media? How are you building that community?
Well, it's not all through just TikTok. I've learned since that account went down that I have to play in all of the areas. And so I'm very active on Instagram, which then feeds, if you're familiar, like your accounts can feed over to Facebook. And then also on LinkedIn. I mean, there's plenty of professional women like us that maybe want to swap out their wine for a different type of beverage once a week. And so just making it acceptable. And it's maybe not the type of product that you'd see on LinkedIn, but they're definitely the customer that is looking for something like Soberish.
Okay, so I saw a recent post. We were just talking off camera before we started the interview. Saw a recent post of yours on LinkedIn that really caught my attention because working with a lot of startups, we often hear this kind of push-pull between seeking funding or not seeking funding. And I know that in your past venture, you did. You raised nearly $2.5 million in external funding when you wanted to expand nationwide. What are your thoughts on funding? Will you be seeking funding for Soberish? How are you feeling?
I know you joked at the beginning that I swore I'd never do this again, and I did. I said, I will never start another startup. I have this great job at Michigan State University now in entrepreneurship and innovation, but I have the entrepreneurship bug. So I put a clause in that because I know I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur, I feel like all my life, that if I did ever have another company, I would not raise outside capital because I was flying around the country, like speaking to investors, just like the whole, like if anybody's not familiar with it, it's not like Shark Tank. You're not like in front of a panel, but you are maybe sometimes at like in a conference room or you're on a Zoom call and they ask you the tough questions similar to on the show. And I would be doing that like every other week.
Yeah.
And then when I was not flying and meeting these investors, I was following up. I was creating spreadsheets. I was creating a new pitch deck. I was creating an executive summary. I was updating all of these things for the investors. And what was I not doing? Running my company. And so even though, yes, the capital that I received from the investors was why we had, over 3 million users by the time we were acquired, I also did not, if I would have spent more time on the company itself, maybe we wouldn't have struggled as hard as we did during COVID, during the pandemic. And I don't know, it's like in my post, it was like to do or not to do, as far as to raise money. It's just a balance. So right now I'm not going to, we're just going to bootstrap like we were planning on. But then a strategic investor could come through with a network, with a manufacturing partner, with, all these other things they could bring to the table. So I don't know. It's up to every founder to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, and I love that you're asking that question. And I love that you actually even polled your community to see what their thoughts are on it. Because, and you through Spartan Innovations, working with a lot of startup founders who are new to the game and might kind of be pushed in one direction or another. And like you said, really figuring out what the right fit is. So I'll be very interested in watching your journey and seeing where you land with that. Looking to the future, looking to where you are right now, what are some current things that you're working on with Soberish? What are you moving towards? What's in the plan?
So we've already launched the marketplace. So we've partnered up with 16 brand partners that have products that deliver a buzz, or they're non-alcoholic alternatives for mocktails and what have you. But I saw a need to, when I was on my sober journey and I'd go out to eat, for example, with my husband, and he'd have his, vodka soda or whatever he was drinking, and I'd order a mocktail or a lemonade. I'm like, well, this is boring. I still wanted like a buzz. Like, why did I have to only have that at home, but not when I went out? And so I thought, like, I wish I could like add something to this. Like, I don't know if it's like, I don't know what. I wish I could add that same feeling into this drink. That's how it all started. So then I kind of came up with like, oh, well, maybe I can do this, that, or the other. Talk to some of the bigger brands about what their struggles were, and they said that shipping was a big struggle because they were literally shipping water. So I was like, well, maybe what if we take the water out of the product and then the person can add the water? Now I'm like, what does that look like? I ended up coming up with a dropper. So it's our Soberish drops. It's a hemp derived flavorless blend that you can just, I mean, it's basically like water you put into your drink, and it mixes right in with whatever you're drinking, and it gets that nice wine-like buzz that I loved from these other products. So really excited that those just launched, seeing great success there. And it's really innovative in the space. And so I'm excited to see where those go. But overall, I'm really excited for Soberish as a whole, as a marketplace, so we can kind of help our guest or our customer wherever they're at in their Soberish journey.
Okay, so that's a huge milestone to go from having these different brand partners and showcasing them in your marketplace to developing your own line of products. What went into creating that?
Oh gosh, a lot, because I know nothing about this space. Remember, I came, from restaurants, banquet, real estate, tech. And it was like, I know nothing about a consumer packaged good, like for one, let alone in the hemp space. And so again, just like my other companies, learning from the best in the business. So I just didn't want to partner with anyone. I figured out who had the best product and then learned who their manufacturer was, finagled my way, hustled my way to an introduction to that manufacturer, talked up my background like you did at the beginning of this podcast, like, hey, I've been on board, I've been all this thing. And they're like, they took my call and I said, so I want to do this thing. And they were so excited about it that they said, we'll help you develop it. So, but that was the biggest thing. They're like, well, how many bottles? How many do you want to jump off with? And I'm like, I don't know, like 50. And they were like, I go, and then I was like, no, I'm not doing this to run like 50 bottles. So we ordered like 1,500 bottles, and yeah, it's been crazy though, from like the labeling to like the brand to how we describe what it is. I mean, it's just been like so much learning, but at the same time, I keep going back to my customers and like what resonates with the customers. And that's how we describe our product. The look that we're going for, we understand that our customers are very afraid of the neon pot leaf. So we wanted to do something that was like completely opposite of that. So there's just so many things, and we're still learning. Even though we're bootstrapping, like I'm taking advantage of all of the like grant opportunities in the state of Michigan, like the BAF grants.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want me to say something? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, Kim. So as we talk about funding and bootstrapping, I think a key component of bootstrapping can be tapping into alternative funding methods where you're still in control of how you're running the company without investors. But say, for instance, grant opportunities. Are you looking into any alternative ways of funding?
Yeah, in our beautiful state, I've actually found out that this doesn't. I assumed that other states did this, but Michigan, we're a rare breed. The state has these local smart zones, and a startup can apply for BAF funding, which is Business Accelerator Funds, if you're in a high growth tech focused startup. And so it's up to $50,000 in a grant. You have to hit certain milestones to get there. But I've applied and been granted my first $20,000, and that was used for like my trademark and some different marketing things. And then, I mean, I'm out there hustling and pitching at every single pitch competition that is known to man, because again, typically that is non-dilutive funds. Recently won the $1,000 at the Lansing New Tech pitch event. And so, yeah, I'm just out there trying to find all the additional funding. So I don't necessarily have to pitch to investors, but there are so many opportunities out there.
Yeah, and if you're watching and you're in Michigan, we will link to the Smart Zone. We'll link to some information. Depending on where you live, different zip codes have different access to different funding grants. I know here in the greater Lansing region, we've got a number of brand new opportunities coming up. So I'll link to some of our resource partners there. Kim, I'm curious, any words of aspiration, any thoughts for an aspiring entrepreneur who is looking to figure out where to start with their startup idea?
So if they have an idea, there's plenty of accelerators. I mean, at my last startup, I was part of Spark in Ann Arbor, which is, the local accelerator. They offered a boot camp to really make sure that you, at the end of the boot camp, if you still had a good idea, then that was great. 90% of the companies dropped out in the middle of the boot camp. I went through the Desai Accelerator in Ann Arbor. I now help with the Conquer Accelerator in Lansing. And it's not just in Lansing, that's Grand Rapids, Detroit, kind of statewide. So if you are in Michigan and you have a tech accelerator, hit up Spartan Innovations, the MSU Research Foundation. They can pair you up with a mentor and resources anywhere in the state. Don't spend a ton of money until you've done a ton of customer discovery. I mean, for me anyway, I use social media to validate my idea. All it cost me was my pride. Honestly, my kids were like, really, Mom, you're doing another video? I'm like, I know, but I have to see
that
what
might be a win though. If your kids don't like you, you're doing something right. At least that's what I tell myself.
And then all their little teenage friends are like, Mrs. Gamez, I saw your TikTok. I'm like, don't, just swipe up or left or whatever you do. Don't. Yeah, but just do it. All I can say is someone else will come up with your idea and you're going to say, that was my idea, but guess what? They did it. So just get out of your comfort zone, ask the questions, take that little bit of risk, whether it's a little bit of money or your time to develop whatever you're doing, but do it. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? You can fail, but at least you said you tried. And if you don't do anything, you didn't even try. So.
Oh, Kim, thanks for being on the show today. Kim Gamez of Soberish. You can learn more at soberish.com. We will link to that in the show notes. You can hear more stories from founders like Kim over in our Startup Connections segment. And be sure to subscribe to Expert Connections so you don't miss a thing. Kim, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.